You know, they say that age is a high price to pay for maturity, but looking back from where I'm sitting at 80, I'd say the view is worth it. I've spent many decades making mistakes, chasing things that didn't matter, and finally, eventually, stumbling onto the things that do. I don't want you to have to stumble as much as I did. I've put together 13 things, just 13, that I wish someone had sat me down and told me years ago. Not because I'm an expert, but because I've been where you are, and I want to help you make the most of the road ahead while the sun is still shining. The first lesson that truly changed how I see life in later years is something we often hear, but rarely take seriously until it becomes personal. Lesson number 1 is this: health is the most valuable asset you have. When you are younger, you can afford to treat your body like it will always recover. You stay up late, you push through exhaustion, you trade sleep for productivity, and somehow you bounce back. But as the years go by, you begin to understand that the body keeps score. What once felt like a small sacrifice starts to show up as real consequences. A good night's sleep becomes more valuable than any late-night accomplishment. A calm mind becomes more precious than constant busyness, and simple movement, like walking without pain, feels like a quiet luxury. Health is no longer something in the background. It becomes the foundation of every good day. And once you see that clearly, you stop taking it for granted. You start eating with more intention, resting without guilt, and protecting your peace as if it were part of your physical well-being, because in many ways, it is. Then, as you begin to pay closer attention to your relationships, especially the one that has been with you the longest, another truth reveals itself. Lesson number 2 is about your spouse, and it is simpler than it sounds, but harder than it looks. Avoid unnecessary arguments. When you've spent decades together, it's easy to fall into patterns of small disagreements. Things that seem insignificant in the moment can slowly build into habits of irritation. But in the later stages of life, peace matters more than being right. Winning an argument doesn't bring the kind of satisfaction it once did. In fact, it often leaves behind a subtle distance that lingers longer than the issue itself. When you realize how limited time really is, you begin to choose your words more carefully. You start letting go of the need to correct every detail, to defend every opinion, to prove every point. Instead, you learn to value presence. Sitting together in silence, sharing a meal without tension, offering a gentle response instead of a sharp one. These are the moments that carry weight. The relationship becomes less about agreement and more about companionship, less about perfection and more about staying kind to each other through the passing of time. As life slows down, your mindset toward worry and responsibility also begins to change. Lesson number 3 is one that can free up an incredible amount of mental energy if you truly embrace it. Stop worrying about unnecessary things. For most of our lives, we are used to worrying. We worry about work, about family, about the future, about things that may or may not happen. It becomes a habit so deeply ingrained that even when many of those responsibilities are no longer ours, the habit remains. But there comes a point when you realize that not everything deserves your attention. Not every problem needs your involvement. Not every outcome is yours to manage. Learning to let go of unnecessary worry is not about becoming careless. It's about becoming selective. You begin to notice how much energy is wasted on things that cannot be changed. And when you stop feeding those worries, something remarkable happens. Your mind becomes quieter. Your days feel lighter. You start to experience moments of calm that were always there, but often overlooked. With that clarity, you naturally begin to look inward at how you are living your daily life. And that leads to another powerful realization. Lesson number 4 is about independence, and it may be one of the most important lessons of all. Do not become dependent on your children. It's easy to assume that as we get older, dependence is inevitable. But in reality, maintaining independence is one of the greatest sources of dignity and self-respect. It's not about refusing help when it's needed, but about preserving your ability to make decisions, to care for yourself, and to live according to your own preferences for as long as possible. When you rely too heavily on others, even with good intentions, you slowly give away parts of your autonomy. And over time, that can affect how you see yourself. But when you maintain even small forms of independence, managing your own routine, making your own choices, keeping a sense of personal control, you hold on to something deeply valuable. It allows you to interact with others not from a place of need, but from a place of balance, and that changes everything. As you try to maintain that balance, especially within the family, you may find yourself naturally drawn into helping more, particularly when it comes to the younger generation. Lesson number 5 speaks directly to this. Do not overextend yourself taking care of your grandchildren. There is a natural love that draws you toward them, a desire to help, to support, to give as much as you can. And while that love is beautiful, it can sometimes lead to overextension. You begin to give not only your time, but also your energy and your financial resources in ways that slowly wear you down. At first, it feels meaningful, even fulfilling. But over time, it can become exhausting, especially when it starts to feel expected rather than appreciated. The lesson here is not to withdraw love, but to set boundaries around it. You can still be present, still share your wisdom, still enjoy those moments of connection without taking on responsibilities that no longer belong to you. Learning where to draw that line is not selfish. It is necessary, because in order to give from a place of genuine care, you first need to protect your own well-being. As boundaries become clearer, you begin to understand the importance of physical and emotional space in a much deeper way. Lesson number 6 is this: keep your own home if you can. There is a certain security that comes from knowing you have a place where you can return, where your routines, your memories, and your sense of self remain intact. Giving that up too easily, whether out of trust, pressure, or convenience, can lead to a subtle but profound loss of stability. Living with others may seem like a practical choice, but it often comes with adjustments that are not always easy to navigate. Over time, you may begin to feel like a guest in a space that doesn't fully belong to you, and that feeling can affect your sense of comfort in ways that are hard to explain. Keeping your own home, no matter how simple, is not just about property. It is about maintaining a foundation, a place where you can live on your own terms, where you don't have to constantly adapt yourself to fit someone else's environment. And as you continue reflecting on family relationships, especially with your children, another quiet but powerful truth emerges. Lesson number 7 is about expectations. Reduce what you expect from your children. As parents, it's natural to hope for certain things. You want your children to succeed, to stay close, to show appreciation, to meet the standards you once imagined for them. But as they grow into their own lives, those expectations can become a source of quiet disappointment. Not because your children don't care, but because their realities are different from your expectations. When you hold on too tightly to what you think should be, you miss the chance to appreciate what is. Letting go of those expectations doesn't mean lowering your standards. It means changing your perspective. You begin to see your children not as extensions of yourself, but as individuals with their own paths. And in doing so, you create space for a relationship that feels more natural, less strained, and far more peaceful. And as these realizations settle in, you start to see a pattern forming, one that gently shifts how you approach the rest of your life. Each lesson is not separate, but connected, building on one another in a way that slowly transforms not just what you do, but how you feel about everything around you. As these realizations begin to settle in, there's a quiet shift that happens inside you. Life no longer feels like something you need to control at every turn. Instead, it becomes something you learn to manage with more awareness, more intention, and far less pressure. And it is right at this point that another important lesson naturally comes into focus, one that many people overlook until it's too late. Lesson number 8 is this: do not reveal all your assets. This is not about mistrust, and it certainly isn't about creating distance within your family. It's about understanding human nature and protecting your own sense of security. When you've spent a lifetime building something, whether it's savings, property, or financial stability, it represents more than just money. It represents your effort, your sacrifices, and your independence. But the moment everything becomes completely transparent, dynamics can begin to shift in subtle ways. Expectations may form, assumptions may grow, and sometimes decisions start being influenced by factors that were never meant to be part of the relationship. By keeping a portion of your financial life private, you are not closing yourself off. You are simply ensuring that you remain in control of your own choices. You preserve your ability to respond to life on your own terms, without feeling pressured or obligated in ways that may not align with your well-being. And in many ways, that quiet control becomes one of the strongest forms of dignity you can maintain. From there, another lesson follows closely, one that touches on how we use our time and energy in daily life. Lesson number 9 is simple, but it requires discipline. Do not stay too long at your children's home. Spending time with family is one of the greatest joys in life, especially as you grow older. Being around your children and grandchildren brings warmth, connection, and a sense of belonging. But even the most loving relationships need space. What begins as a short visit filled with laughter can slowly turn into discomfort if it stretches too long. Small differences in habits, routines, and expectations can quietly create tension. And often, no one says anything directly, which makes it even harder to address. By knowing when to step back, when to return to your own space, you protect the relationship from unnecessary strain. You allow each person to maintain their rhythm, their independence, and their comfort. In a way, leaving at the right time is not distancing yourself. It is preserving the sweetness of the connection. As you become more aware of these subtle boundaries, you also start to look at companionship from a different perspective. Lesson number 10 is one that may feel surprising to some. If you are living alone, do not rush into remarriage. Loneliness can be real, and it can be heavy at times. The desire for companionship is natural, and there is nothing wrong with wanting someone by your side. But at this stage in life, relationships come with complexities that are often underestimated. Different habits, different family situations, different expectations about finances and daily living can create challenges that are not always easy to navigate. What may begin as a solution to loneliness can sometimes introduce new layers of stress. Instead of rushing into a commitment, it is often more meaningful to build connections in simpler ways. Friendships, community activities, shared interests, These can provide companionship without the weight of obligation. And sometimes, learning to be comfortable in your own company brings a kind of peace that no relationship can replace. As this sense of balance deepens, you begin to listen to your body more carefully. Lesson number 11 becomes impossible to ignore. Do not overwork yourself. For most of your life, you were used to being active, responsible, constantly doing something. Rest may have felt like a luxury you couldn't afford. But now, the rules have changed. Your body no longer responds the same way, and pushing beyond your limits carries consequences that are harder to recover from. There is no longer a need to prove your strength through constant activity. In fact, true strength at this stage comes from knowing when to stop, when to sit down, when to take a break, when to let things wait. The world will not fall apart if you do a little less. But your well-being might if you keep trying to do too much. Learning to slow down is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of wisdom. It is the understanding that preserving your energy is more important than exhausting it. And as you begin to slow down, another realization gently takes its place. Lesson number 12 is about how you use what you've earned over a lifetime. Do not be overly frugal to the point that you miss out on life. Saving money has likely been a habit for decades. It was necessary, responsible, and often essential. But there comes a time when saving alone is no longer the goal. The purpose of what you have is not just to keep it, but to allow it to support a life that feels comfortable and enjoyable. Denying yourself small pleasures, whether it's a good meal, a short trip, or something simple that brings you joy, doesn't add value to your life. In fact, it quietly takes something away. You don't need to be extravagant, but you do need to allow yourself to experience the rewards of everything you've worked for. Because time, more than money, is now the most limited resource you have. And finally, all of these lessons come together in one last understanding, one that feels less like advice and more like a gentle reminder. Lesson number 13 is this: protect your sleep and your mental peace. As you grow older, rest becomes more than just a routine. It becomes essential to your overall well-being. A restless mind leads to restless nights, and restless nights slowly affect every part of your life. Carrying worries into bed, replaying the past, or anticipating problems that may never happen only takes away from the one thing your body truly needs, which is deep, uninterrupted rest. Learning to let go at the end of the day is a skill, and it's one of the most valuable ones you can develop. You begin to tell yourself that whatever wasn't solved today can wait until tomorrow. You allow your mind to settle, your body to relax, and your thoughts to quiet down. And in doing so, you give yourself the chance to wake up not just rested, but renewed. When you step back and look at all 13 lessons together, you start to see something deeper than just advice. You see a pattern, a philosophy, a way of living that becomes clearer with time. It's not about doing more, achieving more, or holding on to everything. It's about letting go of what no longer serves you, protecting what truly matters, and learning how to live with intention. Aging is not the end of the road. It is a different kind of journey, one that invites you to slow down, to reflect, and to choose your life more carefully than ever before. And perhaps the most important thing to remember is this: it is not too late. No matter where you are in life, no matter how much time has passed, you still have the ability to adjust, to shift, to create a life that feels lighter, calmer, and more meaningful. You don't need to change everything at once. Even small changes, a little more rest, a little less worry, a little more kindness toward yourself, can transform the way your days feel. And in the end, that is what truly matters. Not how much you have done, but how peacefully you are able to live with what remains.